rescue trucks here when I first came out. The flames were shooting away up past the roof, and then they were working on a girl on the sidewalk.
Tragedy in North York. An overnight house fire claims the life of an infant and sends a woman to hospital with critical injuries. Good afternoon. A community is shaken after the deadly blaze broke out at a home in the Trethewey Drive and Eglinton area. Our Sean Leathong is live with the latest from the scene this afternoon. Sean.
Well, Michelle, we learned that that infant was 5 months old when they were taken out of the house this morning, being taken to hospital. Unfortunately, did not survive. We've also learned a 19-year-old woman is in hospital with critical condition. You can see the scene behind me right now as police remain here. We're expecting an update from the Ontario Fire Marshal's office a little bit later on. Now, we go back to very early this morning. Now, according to records, it was just about 1:30 this morning when fire crews were called to 29 Trethewey, where they encountered a fire that seemed to be focused on the back of this house. Now, we do see the house as a 2-floor house, and fire talked about going in and doing a primary search, which is when they pulled out the woman and the young child. Now, we've been speaking to a number of neighbors this morning, people waking up to find out just what happened, people who knew the family, saying the family had been here for decades. It appears to be a multi-generational home where several people, as many as 5 people, were living in the home, and no word on the conditions of them. Many of the neighbors very sad to find out that it was a baby they would see, the mother walking with the baby several times, but we're not sure whether the 19-year-old is the mother of that child. Here's what we heard from many of the neighbors, but first from Toronto Fire.
Our crews were met with heavy heat and flame at the rear of the structure. Our crews made immediate entry to conduct our primary search. During our primary search, we rescued both an infant and a young female.
The kid was lying down on the floor there already. He was outside. The baby.
She looked real bad shape. Yeah, they were about 10-15 minutes over there working on it, and they put her on the stretcher and did emergency round with the ambulance and the police.
Now, many of the neighbors were concerned about how the fire had in fact started. There's been no word on exactly how that started, but like we said, the Ontario Fire Marshal's office is investigating. We can see that fire and police remain on scene. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. I'll send it back inside.
Thank you, Sean. To Toronto Police Headquarters, and an emotional plea from the family of a teen struck and killed by a vehicle in East York 5 years ago. Today, detectives provided an update on the homicide investigation. Our John Musselman joins us live with the details. John.
Well, Michelle, a devastating situation for this family. We heard from the mother, we heard from family friends of the victims. We'll show you some video and remind our viewers when this happened back in 2019. 16-year-old Matthew Driver was intentionally run down by a vehicle. This happened near Stan Wadlow Park, near the Woodbine and Cosburn area. Now, it started with some kind of interaction with a driver of a vehicle and another passenger in that car. They seem to have tracked Matthew down and then deliberately ran him over, and he died in hospital. Now, police say on the 5-year anniversary, they're appealing to the public for help, but they're also appealing directly to the passenger in the vehicle that was involved in this case. The family, for its part, just wants any answers to what happened here and justice for their family. Here is Matthew's mother and also the detective sergeant in charge of this case.
I have been using my voice to speak for him and trying to bring justice for Matthew's case. Matthew was just a 16-year-old boy who had life ahead of him before he was robbed of that. So please, if someone you know have information that could bring us closer finding his murderer, please speak out.
I'm also making an appeal directly to the man who was the passenger of that vehicle on that night in 2019. I believe that you were not in the vehicle at the time the driver ran over and killed Matthew Driver. I also believe that you did not know that the driver was going to run over Matthew. I am looking to speak with you as a witness in this event.
And police at the time, when they released the surveillance video, showed a dark-colored SUV, a model between 2007 2012 Santa Fe. That's what they're hoping will jog some memories. People will have information and come forward in this case. Reporting live at police headquarters, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, John. A man is dead after a crash on the eastbound 401 in Clarington. This happened around 4:45 this morning on the off-ramp to Holt Road. A badly damaged white vehicle ended up on its roof on the side of the road. The driver, who was the only occupant of the vehicle, was pronounced dead on the scene. And one person is injured after a car crashed into a Tim Hortons on Yonge Street. Emergency crews were called to the scene on Yonge, north of Eglinton, just after 2 this morning. Toronto paramedics say they took a man to hospital with minor injuries. According to Toronto Fire, city engineers have been called in to address the damage done to that building. A fiery early morning crash on the lakeshore that killed 4 people yesterday has ignited concerns about EV batteries and the challenges first responders can face when those batteries catch fire. CTV's Heather Wright has the details.
This is all that's left of a burnt-out Tesla that crashed in downtown Toronto early Thursday morning. 5 people had been inside this car, which was traveling at a high rate of speed, according to police.
The vehicle lost control, struck a guardrail, and then struck a concrete pillar. Upon impact, the vehicle then caught fire.
4 people were killed, 3 men and 1 woman, all in their 20s and 30s. A 5th person was pulled from the wreckage by a bystander. She was taken to hospital and is expected to survive.
They certainly stepped up, and I can say this much. I believe the fire had started when the bystander provided assistance. So again, thanks very much to that bystander.
That fire, intense, according to witnesses.
And all you see is this bright yellow, red, orange burst of flames. Like, it is so intense and just so, honestly, it's terrifying.
Batteries in electric vehicles like Tesla's typically produce larger fires and can take longer to put out.
The volume of water required to safely extinguish an electrical vehicle fire is exponentially greater than a typical car fire with gasoline. So
fire departments around the world are working on new protocols and training when it comes to responding to electric vehicle fires. And while studies suggest EVs are no more likely to burst into flames than those with internal combustion engines, firefighters do face different challenges. The location of the battery can make it harder to extinguish the fire, and special care needs to be taken when disposing of batteries, as they can reignite weeks later.
At this point, officials say it's too early to know whether it was the impact of the crash or the fire that killed those 4 people inside the vehicle. Police are appealing to any witnesses to come forward. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Still ahead, 30 years later, there is a chance Eric and Lau Menendez could be released from prison. We'll have the latest on why the Los Angeles County District Attorney is recommending the brothers be resentenced. That's coming up a little later in the newscast. But first, New Year's Eve will mark the final day that tickets, tokens, and day passes will be accepted on the transit system. This transition away from these fares began in 2019 when they stopped being sold at subway stations. The TTC says fewer than 1% of customers pay with these legacy fares. Residents are encouraged to use up any remaining tickets or tokens they have by December 31st. Starting in the new year, the TTC will only accept fares paid by Presto, debit or credit. Cash payments will also still be accepted at station fare boxes, as well as on buses and streetcars. And if you are planning to take the TTC this weekend, a heads up, part of Bloor-Danforth subway line will be entirely shut down this weekend. There will be no trains on line 2 between Victoria Park and Kennedy stations tomorrow and Sunday. The closure is for planned track work. Shuttle buses will operate and then the regular service, it resumes on Monday by 6 a.m. More news in a moment, but first, let's have a look outside as we near yet another weekend in October. Right now, we have cloudy conditions, and it looks cold, and it is a lot colder than it's been. Jessica Smith is here with the current conditions. I mean, pretty normal for this time of year, but it takes some getting used to.
It's like whiplash, right? We were at 26 degrees earlier this week, and now we're back down to a very seasonal temperature, which feels quite cold in comparison. And we're watching a system that's kind of knocking on the door of the GTA, but it breaks apart just in time. So we're still watching for the chance of rain, but really the majority of that is going to sit north and south of us. As we head throughout the day, though, a noticeable difference with those daytime highs. We're looking at temperatures in the kind of 9 to 11 degree range around the Golden Horseshoe, a little cooler towards those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. Right now, now through the islands about 12, through Pearson about 10, and we're looking at a southerly flow to the wind for now. This afternoon sitting around 13, but it gets a little cooler. Your full forecast coming up, but right now back to Michelle.
Thank you, Jess. Well, we're learning more details about that U.S. investigation into an international drug trafficking ring allegedly run by former Canadian Olympic snowboarder Ryan Wedding. CTV's Mike Walker is live here in studio to bring us the very latest details. What have you learned, Mike?
Well, Michelle, court documents obtained by CTV News reveal that authorities in the U.S. knew about Wedding's whereabouts earlier this year and that a cooperating witness in the investigation had met with him in person. As authorities continue to search for former Canadian Olympian and fugitive Ryan Wedding, new court documents filed in Ontario reveal U.S. authorities knew exactly where he was earlier this year. The FBI alleges Wedding is the leader of a criminal group running a transnational drug trafficking operation. According to a statement of facts, a cooperating witness who had trafficked drugs with Wedding for more than a decade agreed to assist U.S. authorities with their investigation into drug trafficking. The facts reveal that in January, the cooperating witness met in person with Wedding and his second-in-command, Andrew Clark, in Mexico City to arrange for the transportation of cocaine. The documents also reveal the witness had communicated with other group members between February and April, allegedly about transporting large quantities of cocaine. Earlier this month, authorities announced the indictment of Wedding and 15 others as part of a multinational criminal enterprise for smuggling cocaine into Canada from Colombia through Mexico. 4 suspects were arrested in Ontario.
He chose to become a major drug trafficker, and he chose to become a killer.
Investigators allege Wedding orchestrated a number of murders in Ontario, including one that resulted in the deaths of 2 innocent people, Jagtar Singh Sandhu and Harbhajan Kaur Sandhu in Caledon. The OPP have said they believe the shooting was a case of mistaken identity. Investigators have said they don't know Wedding's whereabouts. The FBI is offering up to $50,000 for information on the wanted fugitive. Wedding is wanted for 8 felonies, including 3 charges of murder in connection with continuation with a criminal enterprise. The 4 accused arrested in Ontario are due back in court here next month. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. There is growing concern over allegations of bad behavior by an Ontario police officer. The deputy was allegedly caught speeding twice in 2 days without penalty. CTV's Adrian Gobriel has the details.
Caught speeding, and you can expect a ticket. Though there's allegations that the rules of the road don't apply if you're a high-ranking officer with Ontario's Durham Regional Police.
Police have a responsibility to the public to fairly and impartially uphold the law.
According to the Toronto Star, in June, Durham Police Deputy Chief Chris Kirkpatrick was pulled over in his unmarked vehicle after speeding through a school zone. The very next day, he was stopped for driving 50 kilometers over the speed limit, which in Ontario would normally lead to a charge of stunt driving. But both times, he was allegedly let off. In an email to CTV News, Durham Region Police say, "We are aware of allegations that were made against Deputy Kirkpatrick. Upon becoming aware of the allegations, Chief Moreira referred the matter to the Police Service Board. The board requested that a separate police service in Peel Region west of Toronto conduct an independent investigation. Peel Police tell us the investigation was completed and the report has been provided to the Durham Police Board. But that's where our chase hit a roadblock. The chair of Durham's Police Board, Sean Collier, who's also the mayor of Ajax, Ontario, has yet to respond to our email or our request to make the findings in the report public.
It's not enough to simply say no comment. We're not dealing with a private company here. We're talking about the police, who have an obligation first and foremost to the public.
Members of the Toronto Police Accountability Coalition believe across Canada, transparency remains a systemic problem.
Anyone who's had to submit a Freedom of Information request, you'll find that it takes a long time. Just many, many ways to delay justice, and justice delayed is justice denied.
This comes as the force here in Durham Region remain under a separate investigation by a civilian police commission for allegations of corruption and abuse of power. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Pickering, Ontario.
We turn now to the shortage of family doctors here in Ontario. Premier Doug Ford was in Oshawa this morning to announce new efforts to connect those in need to primary care. CTV News Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris is live in Oshawa with those details. Siobhan.
Well, the Premier says it's clear the province needs to do more to get more people connected with a family doctor. He says right now that figure is about 10% that don't have access to one. The Ontario Medical Association says it's more like a quarter of Ontarians. Today, the Premier was announcing $88 million for the Study and Stay grant. That covers tuition for students who study family medicine, commit to practicing family medicine here in Ontario. The government will also introduce legislation that will make for some changes at colleges and universities starting in the fall of 2026, essentially freezing international students out of medical positions, reserving 95% rather of those positions for students born in Ontario, the rest for students from across Canada. Here's more of what we heard from the Premier.
There was 18% students from around the world taking our kids' seats and then not even staying here and going back to their country. And it's just not right. So now it's going to be 100% Canadian, 95% Ontario. So I'm glad we're getting this done. Medical schools will also have to create more opportunities for Ontario students who started their medical education abroad to be able to complete their postgraduate training here in Ontario.
I asked the Premier about reporting from our Pat Foran this week about the high cost of hospital parking that people visiting loved ones have been paying, as well as staff. He says he doesn't think it's fair, but he sides with hospital CEOs, says it's up to them to determine those parking fees. We have heard calls from the NDP this week urging the government to fund more for hospitals so they don't have to resort to these parking fees in the first place. Reporting live, I'm Siobhan Morris. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. After spending more than 3 decades in prison for murdering their parents, Lyle and Eric Menendez are a major step closer to leaving prison. This after a Los Angeles County District Attorney recommended they be resentenced.
And if the parole concurs with my assessment, and it will be their decision, they will be released accordingly.
The brothers were convicted in the 1989 killing of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, at the family's Beverly Hills mansion. The brothers now need to get a judge to go along with the DA's recommendation that they be resentenced amid new evidence, a move that would make them immediately eligible for parole. The final approval would come from a parole board. CTV's Scott Hurst joins us live now with the latest. Scott, this was such a high-profile case back in the 90s, and now it's come to light once again with some shows on TV. Let's revisit the Menendez brothers' story and the latest here.
Michelle, you laid out some of the legal challenges that still lie ahead for their freedom, but there's no question about it. The Menendez brothers are significantly closer to tasting freedom than at any point in the last 3+ decades. It is an extraordinary development in a legal saga that captivated television viewers, one of the big TV court cases of the 90s that played out for millions to witness. Now the LA County District Attorney is saying he believes that they have paid their debt to society. Lyle Menendez, now 56, Eric Menendez, now 53. Originally, prosecutors said they murdered their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, for money. Now the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office is recommending the brothers who say they were sexually assaulted by their father be resentenced to 50 years to life. And according to the DA, because they were much younger when they killed their parents, they would then be eligible for parole. As you pointed out, it's up to a Superior Court judge to make the ultimate decision, and then after that, a parole board as well. So there are still some legal hurdles in their way, but according to family members and a lawyer for the Menendez brothers, there is a hope that there is a chance the brothers could be released if all goes according to plan by U.S. Thanksgiving, which is just a month away.
And it must be noted that there is a documentary on Netflix right now, as well as a drama. You have celebrities like Kim Kardashian and Rosie O'Donnell coming out in support of these brothers. And it is interesting to sort of revisit their case and their story through a 2024 lens. Talk to us about the impact of those things on this recommendation to have the sentence looked at again.
Michelle, of course, what we're seeing on Netflix, no doubt about it, has ramped up attention to this case once again, albeit despite the scrutiny that the Netflix series is getting from family members. But there's no doubt it has really supercharged supercharge the public's interest once again, but also other recent media accounts and new evidence kicking off a campaign to free them by dozens of family members, as you mentioned, celebrities as well. And now the backing of the LA County District Attorney. Here's more from family members on some of the latest developments.
Thank you to District Attorney George Gascon. This step gives us all hope that the truth will finally be heard and that Lyle and Eric can begin to heal from the trauma of their past.
Now, Michelle, there's one other aspect of this, one other wrinkle that should be pointed out at least. The district attorney is up for re-election in just a few weeks in early November, and his political rival, his opponent in the election, is accusing him of using this case to grab headlines, not just in Los Angeles, but of course around the world. Now, the DA has denied any political motivations behind using this case.
It'll be interesting to see what happens next. CTV's Scott Hurst live for us today. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
We take you to the Middle East now, where Palestinian health officials say Israeli forces killed 38 people in Khan Yunis. There were emotional scenes in the southern Gaza City today following the attack that also injured more than a dozen people. Health officials say several residential buildings in neighborhoods of East Khan Yunis were also struck. The Israeli military said its forces had killed a number of gunmen in air and ground strikes in the southern Gaza Strip and dismantled military infrastructure. Palestinian officials said Israel also launched a nighttime raid on a hospital in the north of the enclave. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, an Israeli airstrike killed 3 journalists at a guest house early today. This happened in the southern area that had so far been spared the hostilities in the rest of the region. The strike drew immediate condemnation from officials, journalists, and press advocacy groups. One saying Israel wants to prevent the journalists from covering what is happening in the south of Lebanon. 3 of the 18 journalists staying in that guest house were injured. The Israeli army did not issue a warning prior to the strike and said it was looking into it. In India, a tropical cyclone has made landfall, delivering heavy rain and high winds in the eastern part of that country. Authorities evacuated nearly 600,000 people in high-risk zones earlier this week. Schools were also closed, and trains and flights were canceled in some areas. India's weather department issued its highest red rainfall warning for some areas. As of early today, there were no casualties or major damage. The storm is due to push further into northern Odisha and gradually weaken. Well, this is the last full day of the King's visit to Samoa. The monarch planted a tree in a botanical garden today. Earlier, he addressed Britain's colonial past during a meeting of Commonwealth countries. The King stopped short of mentioning financial reparations that some leaders at the event have urged. Instead, he suggested finding the right language and an understanding of history and use that as a guide to making the right choices in future where inequality exists. Jess.
Well, after a really warm start to the week, we've settled into a fairly seasonal stretch as we head in towards your weekend. So not quite sweater weather, depending on how you like your temperatures. This afternoon will sit around 13. The norm is 11, so we're back in a very normal range. It is generally cloudy, but there is that slight chance of showers as a low sits just north of us, but a cold front will sweep across, change those wind directions once again, and really start to cool things down. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including a breakdown of your weekend and what you can expect. That's all coming up after the break.
Friday has arrived, and definitely there is a chill in the air. But I think, talking during the break, I think it's important to note that depending on where you are, this is not a big rain event kind of day.
Yeah, it can be a little deceiving when you just look at icons. If you look at any weather maps, that's why you always have to tune in and listen to us, and to me specifically. Just to toot my own horn. But it is one of those days where, because we have such a large system coming across southern Ontario, it can look like everybody's going to get the rain. We're likely holding on to just cloud cover as we head throughout the day. But either way, it's a little fresher. If you were out early on this morning, you needed a sweater, maybe a jacket. But as we head in towards the weekend, things start to get a little better. And then by next week, we're back into the 20s. Weather is brought to you by the Presley Law Firm. Injury lawyers, you don't pay unless they win. Now, beautiful day, but you can see that layer of clouds kind of just lingering over us. That's the bulk of what we are getting here in the GTA. You can see where it quite literally cuts off the sunshine. But we are going to see this system with a cold front sweep across southern Ontario, bringing the likelihood of just a little bit of unsettled weather, mostly north of the city. As we head into the afternoon, though, that chance of rain really starts to push out, and the start of the weekend looks actually pretty nice. Temperature-wise, we're sitting at about 10 degrees, so no, it's not cold, but it's definitely a transition from what we saw earlier in the week. Northern Ontario is holding on in the single digits. We're still somewhat in the double digits here in the south, but not for too long as we head in towards this evening. A daytime high, very much in that seasonal range. We're holding on to a decent amount of cloud cover. Again, the bulk of that rain is north and east of the city once again. The system right now looks like a pretty defined line, and then it quite literally parts ways just before it reaches the GTA. Into this evening, we'll sit around 7, so we do hold on to a little more warmth as we head in towards this evening, staying above seasonal. But for the most part, we're all kind of between about 6 and about 9 degrees, relatively speaking, with the exception of areas towards Niagara. So there's that line of showers. It looks pretty intense, pretty defined, right? But as it reaches us, it really does break apart. The bulk of it will be north of the city, then it heads east and in towards Quebec, where it turns into a little bit of snow. For us, though, we're just holding on to a decent amount of rain. As we head throughout the afternoon, again, the bulk of it pushes out, and we're just left with that cloud cover out there. But we'll see winds become northwesterly this afternoon, and that really does help to cool things down. Right now, it feels okay if you have a jacket on, but it will feel a little chillier the later in the day that we get. Into the evening, though, a lot of it starts to break up. We'll see high pressure start to return. And although we are watching for the slight chance, again, of passing showers north of the city, the very tail end of that cold front, the bulk of it nowhere near the GTA or the downtown core. Into the afternoon, beautiful sunshine and a great forecast. If you do still have some things you want to do, maybe when it comes to getting those pumpkins or getting ready for the Halloween season, if you partake in Halloween. As we make our way in towards the next couple of days, it does stay pretty nice. So again, your weekend, very seasonal from start to finish. It is a little cool, though, heading in towards your Saturday night and your Sunday night. We get into Monday. Again, the warm-up is pretty slow, and then we ricochet back above seasonal as we head in towards next week. We're still quite a ways away from Halloween, but we are looking right now at a mild but mostly cloudy kind of start. We'll switch gears, and you need to buy early to win more. The Princess Margaret Home Lottery bonus prize deadline is midnight tonight. The $1.2 million bonus prize includes a downtown Toronto condo with a stunning view of both the city and the Lake Ontario, season tickets to the Maple Leafs, the Raptors, and the Toronto FC, plus $50,000 cash, featuring over 16,000 prizes to be won, valued at more than $15 million. Imagine winning an incredible $7.4 million grand prize that includes a stunning King City show home, plus you get $500,000 cash, plus a gorgeous $2.4 million grand prize with a show home in Georgian Bay, plus $50,000 cash. And let's not forget the world famous $2.7 million early bird prize with a breathtaking Kawartha lakefront cottage, plus $50,000 cash. Plus, you can win big with the cash prizes with the 50/50 cash calendar and the new Wanderlist add-ons. Every ticket helps fund life-saving cancer research at the Princess Margaret. You can get your tickets today at princessmargaretlotto.com or by calling 1-866-631-1234. Michelle.
Thanks, Jess. Well, we're learning more about the alleged links between organized crime groups and a surprisingly valuable industry, clothing donation bins that police say may be connected to a rash of assaults and arsons. As W5's John Woodward reports, the turf war has even targeted legitimate charities.
These donation bins look like an easy way to give your clothes away to a good cause. But what if we told you that instead of helping those in need, you might actually be helping line the pockets of criminals?
Bins being set on fire, assaults.
Retired York Regional Police Inspector Dieter Boheim says shady players muscled in on the bin industry.
You have people with some pretty nasty backgrounds involved in it. To me, it's a crime of violence.
W5 has obtained exclusive Peel and York Regional Police intel reports, along with court records that suggest some bins scattered throughout the Greater Toronto area are believed to be tied to groups of Italian and Albanian organized crime.
What was called Albanian organized crime groups that were involved in dealing with these charity collections of bins.
Why would organized crime care about your used clothes? It turns out your rags are their riches. Last year alone, records from Global Affairs Canada show $181 million in used clothing was shipped overseas.
We were bullied.
Sylvia Crampell of the Kidney Foundation of Canada says her organization raises about $1 million a year from donated clothes, and others wanted a piece of it.
We had other for-profits that were damaging our bins, vandalizing them, driving into them, stealing them, reselling the scrap, repainting them, doing anything and everything they could to get us off of their turf.
So you unwittingly stumbled into a turf war?
Absolutely.
And it may not just be the value of clothes that's appealing to criminals. The Peel Police Intel report bluntly states the used clothing industry is known to be a lucrative cash business, thus making it attractive for organized crime to become involved as a way to launder money.
If I was in that business, and I was also, say, in the drug business, I have cash income from various criminal markets, I can launder all that money through one main business, being my used clothing business.
The fight for control of the bin industry erupted in 2013. That's when, here in this Orangeville, Ontario parking lot, men from rival bin organizations got involved in a violent altercation. According to a bail hearing transcript, 2 men had their windows of their cars smashed with baseball bats, 2 others charged with assault. They entered into a peace bond and the charges were withdrawn. And these surveillance images from 2016 capture an alleged heist in progress. The target, clothing donation bins. Disputes between those involved in clothing bins became increasingly violent, including a double stabbing in Mississauga, Ontario, sending 2 men to hospital.
This one's heavy, be careful.
Meanwhile, Sylvia Crampel keeps working to help Canadians suffering from kidney disease.
The job is already hard enough as it is, and it just got 10 times harder because we had to deal with the vandalism and the turf war. And if we don't raise that money, it takes away from what they can do for kidney patients and for Canadians.
Crampel wants anyone out to donate clothes to watch the signs on the bin. Otherwise, there's a chance their valuable clothes are going to fund organized crime.
That's W5's John Woodward reporting. And John continues tonight with more on the surprising number of bin owners who have criminal records and how one city is actually fighting back. Quick break, much more when we return. A remarkable young woman is talking about her experiences as a living organ donor. It's something she did not just once, but twice in her life. And as our health reporter Pauline Chan tells us, both recipients were complete strangers.
In 2015, when Jocelyn Leeworthy was 19, she had a relative who was seriously ill, prompting her to consider whether she might be a living organ donor.
I was volunteering at the hospital for sick children, and I really got some perspective of what it's like for kids and families in the hospital and how illness can impact their quality of life.
And while her relative didn't need her, she decided to go ahead with giving a part of her liver to help a child in need.
I was at university 2 weeks later writing my midterm exams, and other than being a little tired, I was feeling really well.
Leeworthy, now a child life specialist at Oakville Trafalgar, knows nothing about that organ recipient, but every October, the anniversary of the transplant, they exchange cards. Her second anonymous organ donation in January of 2021 was a kidney as part of a chain of kidney donations to help a group of patients at the height of COVID.
My kidney went to somebody from London Health Sciences, and they did let me know that it got a police escort to get there. So it's kind of neat to have that image.
She's only 28 now, and Jocelyn still has many decades ahead of her, but she says living with just one kidney was deemed to be safe for her. She also has a form of albinism, which was not a factor in her organ donations.
I think first and foremost, I think it's important that you make an informed decision.
Dr. Nazia Selzner says anonymous living donations have grown tremendously since Toronto's first in 2005.
Particularly in the last few years, we have actually doubled the number of the anonymous living liver donors. And it has become an integral part of our program. So we accept anybody who is between the age of 16 to 60 years of age, as long as they are otherwise healthy. So no major chronic health issues, no history of cancer, for example, no history of diabetes.
There is somebody walking around out there that has a part of my organ inside of them, and it's allowing them to do these wonderful things in their life that I've had the opportunity to do, like getting an education and making memories with my friends and family.
For more information on anonymous living organ donations, contact the Ajmera Transplant Center at the University Health Network. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
The Fringe Festival is famous for bringing innovative theatre and performance to Toronto audiences in the summer, and now they have a fall festival called Next Stage Theatre Festival. Our Andrea Case spoke to a Vancouver playwright who now lives in Toronto about her very first play.
Such a pleasure to have the opportunity to chat about
about this piece and about the process, because it's, theater is such a collaborative, mammoth task.
In an effort to carve out some private time during the pandemic, Bonnie Duff decided to get an early start to her day.
Over COVID, I was getting up very early every morning to have a little bit of time alone from my roommates, and I would watch the sunrise every morning. And this sort of central premise of this play being that the sun just one morning doesn't come up, and every morning I would get up, and the whole world was sort of at a standstill, and I just remember one morning thinking, oh, what if it just didn't today?
So the reluctant playwright got down to work.
I've seen so many plays and just thought that was such an impossible thing to imagine being the one to sort of birth that, to create it. And I just sort of wondered, could I? I think it was almost more of a curiosity than anything else of it seems like this totally insurmountable thing, and then you think, why not?
Remembering a myth from her home country of Finland, she wrote This Feels Like the End, a play which looks at the disappearance of the sun from 5 different people's points of view. In an effort to save money and utilize the Finnish language, Duff plays the role of a reporter.
One thing that I've been really excited about is this sharing of some folklore and mythology of a country that I am from, and that this in a city where you don't see very much of that because nobody really leaves Finland.
Well, her family did. Landing in Vancouver as a child, growing up, she fell in love with theater, which led to becoming a playwright. A move to Toronto has exposed her to a larger theater community, which has been both a challenge and a joy.
These folks coming into this audition room, all of these 4 actors that we cast have this excitement and that exact curiosity that we just thought, well, what a wonderful place of exploration to take it to the next stage.
Buddies in Bad Times Theater is the home to the Next Stage Theater Festival. This feels like the end of one of 6 plays currently on stage here. The festival wraps up on Sunday, October 27th. Andrea Case, CTV News.
In sports, the Raptors are back in action tonight. Toronto is looking to rebound from Wednesday's opening night loss to Cleveland. They host the Philadelphia 76ers tonight. Raptors point guard Emmanuel Quickley is listed as doubtful with a pelvic contusion. The Sixers star center Joel Embiid has a knee injury and is expected to miss a 2nd straight game. Well, the most anticipated World Series in years begins tonight, a star-studded matchup featuring baseball's 2 biggest markets and marquee teams.
I think this is something that will garner a lot of interest all over the country, all over the world, probably more so than usual. I think everyone can identify with Dodgers, can identify with Yankees, and just what that means worldwide.
You could easily argue that on a global scale, the Yankees and the Dodgers are the most followed, the most supported, the most visible.
50 home run hitters, Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge will lead 2 high-powered offenses. Their teams are squaring off in the championship series for the first time in 43 years. L.A. hosts Game 1 tonight with Jack Flaherty on the mound for the Dodgers. Garrett Cole gets the ball for the Yankees.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
Stocks rose in Canada and the U.S. this morning, but markets were still short of last Friday's record highs. Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg brings us the latest in business.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Stocks edged higher in early trading today. South of the border, big tech led the market higher. In Toronto, Alimentation Couche-Tard fell to its lowest in a year as investors weigh the company's plan to take on a pile of debt in its proposed takeover of the 7-Eleven chain. American Airlines is cracking down on so-called gate lice. That's the term for passengers who mob boarding areas and try to get on the plane before their group or zone is called. In a trial, an alert beeps if a passenger scans their boarding pass before it's their turn. And finally, the Wall Street Journal says people in Britain are miffed as retailers plunge ever earlier into the holiday season. The phenomenon is dubbed the Christmas creep. Liberties, a famed London department store, opened an entire Christmas floor on August 23rd. And at Tesco supermarkets, you can buy seasonal mince pies already. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
In August, the federal government allowed 30-year mortgage amortizations for first-time homebuyers purchasing new builds. The rules expand in December to all first-time homebuyers and to all buyers of new builds. But those extra 5 years, they come at a cost. CTV's Pat Foran has this consumer alert.
First-time homebuyers can now get a 30-year insured mortgage amortization when purchasing newly built homes. On December 15th, the program will be open to all first-time homebuyers and to all buyers of new builds. It's part of several measures designed to make housing more affordable.
It's about making that first home more available for young Canadians, for first-time home buyers.
Those extra 5 years could help some first-time home buyers get into the market, but at an added cost.
The increase in amortization is a trap. You're going to be working till, you're past retirement.
Mark Nixon, a commercial mortgage broker, says the 30-year amortization plan is good news for developers and bankers, but in the end, home buyers will pay the price with added interest. If you have a $950,000 mortgage at a 4.5% interest rate, switching from 25 years to 30 will allow you to have a monthly payment that is $466 lower. However, taking an extra 5 years to pay off your mortgage will see you pay almost $150,000 more in interest.
The banks are going to make a killing.
Mortgage broker Ron Butler calls 30-year mortgages unfortunate but necessary.
But to even give the slightest chance to young people, you need to give them a 30-year amortization. And regrettably, that just means there's a ton of extra interest.
In the U.S., Americans are allowed to deduct mortgage interest they pay on their homes on their taxes, an idea Nixon says could benefit Canadians.
I mean, they do it in the U.S. I don't know why they're not doing it in Canada. It's getting so unaffordable. It's discouraging for our young people.
Longer mortgages may help some Canadians get into the housing market, but it's important to crunch the numbers so you know how much those extra 5 years will cost you. Pat Foran, CTV News.
Coming up, a 12-year-old girl from Ontario is showcasing her need for speed on the world stage, racing for Canada this weekend. We'll have her story after this short break. How about this? An Ontario girl is set to represent Canada on the world stage. 12-year-old Ava Cabral is racing in the International Automobile Federation's 2024 Motorsport Games today. But as CTV's Colton Weens reports, she hopes this is only the beginning.
Blink and you miss her. 12-year-old Ava Cabral has always lived her life with a need for speed.
I've always loved cars since I was a baby. Formula One was my everything. Cars was my everything.
She's always been obsessed with cars. She got her Power Wheels when she was 3 years old and she wanted it faster, so Dad made it faster.
Pursuing a sport many in Canada don't know much about, Cabral is quickly rising in the ranks. Winning the Canadian Karting Championship last year, she was then selected to represent Canada at the 2024 International Automobile Federation's Motorsport Games in Valencia, Spain this weekend.
I am proud and honored to be representing Canada. It's amazing.
Cabral is competing this weekend in what's known as the cross-car mini category, which takes her onto the dirt, something she says she'll need to get used to.
Different driving styles, different racing lines. It's just a whole different setup.
Cabral is also one of 5 girls competing in her field of 14 different countries, saying she feels she often needs to put in a little more effort than the boys.
Sometimes I get targeted more often. Usually I get pushed or shoved more. I get treated differently.
As scary as it has been for me as a mom, it has very much shaped who she is as a person already at 12 years old.
At home, Cabral says her friends don't really know about the sport. She races out of Hamilton, and despite being a nation-leading driver, she's still several years from hitting the open road.
I'm a little worried. She's only ever known how to do, pedal to the floor.
Cabral competes in qualifying on Friday. The races can be watched online, but no matter the result, she plans to keep passing checkered flags in the future.
I would love to be in F1, but since this is a male-dominated sport, it is going to be very difficult for that. I would just love to see any female in F1. The goal I want to go is the Indy, but it's wherever the money and wherever the talent, my talent takes me.
Colton Weens, CTV News.
Go get it, girl. Yeah, that's incredible. Can't wait to see what she does. Now, you've noticed some rain in certain parts.
Yeah, so not everywhere in the GTA is seeing it right now. So if you're towards Pearson, which is in Mississauga, obviously you're seeing a little bit more rain. Mississauga, Etobicoke. If you are kind of north of the city, the downtown core is still staying relatively dry, but we're in that window, right? That's why we have that chance of rain for the entire area. It's pretty short-lived, and as we head into the afternoon, we will see a little bit of sunshine through all that cloud before the day is all said and done. But you can see it there, just a wave of very light showers making their way through, heavier along that eastern shoreline of Georgian Bay. Temperature-wise, it's still pretty mild, sitting at 11 here in the city, and overall, we're holding on to seasonal weather as we end the day today. Into the weekend, the chance of some showers tomorrow morning, but overall, it's pretty nice. And looking ahead to Halloween, I don't know, it's mild. I'll take it.
18 for Halloween. That's fabulous. Thank you, Jess. That's it for us, and CTV News at noon. But remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on our sister station, CP24, and at our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca. For Jess Smith and the whole team here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé. We hope to see you for CTV News at 5 and 6.